Thank you very much. Hi, everyone, and welcome to what promises to be another great session today. This time, a deep dive as we near the end of our first ever virtual PRovoke Global Summit into a truly inspiring campaign. It's a campaign partnership that started 6 years ago in India between Avian We and RB Health, the company behind Dettol disinfectant. The campaign, Beniga Swatch India, has evolved into a true exemplar of purpose-driven communications, and that was saving lives well before COVID-19. And it's evolved further over the past year to become even more relevant, impactful, and human. I'm delighted to say that as of last night, it's also one of our top 25 global campaigns of the year, as announced at the Sabres. So let me introduce my guest today. First, we have an industry figure who many of you will know very well, Avian We Group Chief Executive Nitin Mantri, who's also the current president of both ECO and the Public Relations Consultants Association of India. Since joining the agency in 2006, he's grown it from a team of 10 to more than 200 employees in 6 offices across India, looking after an enviable client list. Nitin, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Maya.
And joining Nitin, we have Pankaj Duhan, the Chief Marketing Officer for RB Health in South Asia, soon to be moving to the firm's London headquarters to lead the Dettol brand globally. Pankaj has led a number of behavioural change campaigns at RB Health, including the TikTok hand wash challenge that garnered something like 125 billion views, not to be sniffed at. Pankaj, thank you so much for joining us today at the PRovoke Global Summit.
Maya, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Just as a note before we kick off, if any of our guests have questions for Nitin or Pankaj, please do put them in the chat on the side of your screen and we'll get to them at the end. Pankaj, let's start with a bit of an overview and some context from you. Dettol increased its focus on consumer behaviour change with this campaign 6 years ago. Can you tell us a little bit about the genesis of it? What was the need and what were you trying to achieve from the outset?
Sure, Maya. So the starting point of the program was in a very visionary program that was started by the government of India in late 2014. This was the Swachh Bharat mission, essentially a clean India mission. Right? So this was aimed at eliminating open defecation and solid waste management in the country. Right? And because Dettol is a brand that is the #1 disinfection brand in India, right, and it aims to prevent illnesses and fights against germs, this was right, up where we wanted to partner and land this important mission of the government, empower it, strengthen it, and essentially land it in the country. So we, together with many like-minded partners like Avian, like with NDTV, it's one of the big channels in the country, right? And many other NGO agencies, we started our own Banega Swachh India program, right? So in 2015. And this program was aimed at improving the sustainable developmental goals for India, as well as improving the health and hygiene index of the country, right? And this focused on 4 different areas and parameters. So health and hygiene, on sexual well-being and rights, environment like air pollution, as well as malnutrition and stunting. So these were 4 areas that we picked up, but every year we would pick one particular cause, right? And we would try to make a very measurable and a sustainable and a very visible difference towards these goals that we had. So this has been an awesome journey, very empowering, very fulfilling, and with some very, very measurable output and results.
It's an ambitious scope from the outset, though. How did you decide on where to put your focus as a brand?
So while this is an evolving purpose in a program for us. So we started off with the brand purpose itself, right? And as I talked about from a Dettol perspective, making sure that we are able to fight against the germs that the brand always is a very strong brand on, but trying to get India to be illness free, right, is always a desire for us, and that is what we would work towards. And this, we didn't start with a particular a high lofty objective in mind. This is an evolving program for us, right? But every year we have focused on trying to get a very measurable improvement and a goal for us, right? And every year we have learned on the way. We have not tried for this program to benefit the brand, right? but we have tried to use the brand strengths to be able to leverage the program and make a meaningful difference. So for example, in many of the areas, we've started the Dettol hygiene curriculum, okay, in the schools of India. So right now, this is a program that reaches about 60% of the 1.5 million schools in the country. Okay, so 60%. So that is the scale that we've gotten it to. It teaches the kids at such an impressionable age about the habit of hand washing, the importance of sanitation, right, and so on and so forth. And the measure that we evaluate it on is that in the schools where the hygiene curriculum has been implemented, the diarrhea rate has decreased by 14%, and the school attendance has increased by 17%. Right. So
That's incredible.
so these are the metrics that we judge ourselves by to make a very solid difference at a big scale and a measurable difference.
So how's the campaign evolved over the past year? Because the name of it has changed, hasn't it? From Beniga Swatch to Beniga Swast.
Swast. So Swatch essentially means cleanliness or clean, right? And Swast is the Indian name for health. Right? So what we as a brand fundamentally believe on is that the being Swatch or being clean is the first step or a stepping stone to being genuinely healthy, right? So clean being a stepping stone to health. So that was always a natural progression, but over the years, what we've picked up a cause and the campaign has evolved, right? So for example, in the first year, we had a Swachhta Express bus, okay, so a cleanliness bus, so to speak, that went through 350 villages in the country, right, and trying to educate people on the importance of sanitation, importance of toilets, and so on and so forth. And this generated almost $45 million, okay, from different people, different corporates, etc., to be able to make toilets and maintain toilets and so on and so forth, right? In one of the years, we had a drive on the hygiene curriculum that we talked about, right? So we called it Swachhta Ki Pathshala, the school of hygiene, okay? And then we went on to environment and we campaigned against air pollution, right? So crop burning that leads to air pollution and what could be the ways that we could minimize air pollution in India, especially in the northern parts of the country. And as we got as we moved on, and then we gravitated towards the causes of health. And there was, it was a very unfortunate time, but nothing more appropriate than that could have been done during the COVID times, right? So where we talked about the Swasth Mantra. So it is, a few keys that could help you prevent and protect yourself against COVID environment, and that focused on education, behavior changes like hand washing and so on and so forth that are the proven preventative measures against COVID-19, as well as access to the right products and the right habits and the medical services and so on and so forth to control this pandemic.
So very much a campaign for our times now. How incredible that you're kind of already underway with all those measures and all that infrastructure and all that strategy as well. Nitin, if I come to you, what has Avian We's part been on this journey so far?
Well, just to reiterate what Pankaj spoke earlier, Dettol has been such a huge brand in India, a trusted partner of health. Even today, when you speak about health and hygiene, Dettol continues to be one of the most trusted partners, trusted, I would say, protectors of health. Our role really as a comms partner has been pretty simple. I mean, rightfully deliver the purpose of the brand through effective communications, but more importantly, to the right set of stakeholders. It is the underlying essence that makes a brand relevant and necessary to its customers. And I think Dettol believes in driving those meaningful conversations through communications, and we've partnered them in this journey. So if you look at whether you're reaching out through this program to your stakeholders, whether they are in rural India, whether they are in urban markets, or whether they are other stakeholders, whether they are in, whether it's government or partners or suppliers, that communication's gone across the board.
You picked up on the wide range of stakeholders you've got involved here. What are some of the challenges that you've faced in engaging those different stakeholders, whether they're government officials or in rural India, effectively?
So Dettol has worked with partners, NGOs in some of the rural areas. to effectively reach out to customers. So, the scale of the program was so big that one company on their own cannot do it. You have to work with grassroots level organizations to talk about whether the curriculum that Pankaj spoke about, whether it's talking about cleanliness, the regime, and the partners have really, really helped us in reaching out to the NGOs, to the masses.
And Pankaj, how important is it that you found the right partners throughout this whole process?
I think it's extremely critical. You won't be able to undertake something that as huge as this and something that we want to remain as sustainable as this, right? So without the right partners. So partners that share the right vision, right, is extremely critical. But at the same time, when you go to the grassroots level, you face many, many challenges like languages, okay, and like logistics, like barriers or resistance to newer ways of working, new education system, and so on and so forth. So you need to have ability at the local grassroots levels, right, to be able to implement a program like this, have local connections to be able to work with it, and people, they need to be partners who people trust locally as well, right? So all of this is extremely important because not everything goes your way. Right. And when we're talking about a 6-year journey, 7-year journey, etc., there are many a times when things will not go our way, when there'll be barriers, etc. You need to have the same purpose, the same vision, the same driving force, and the same values that bring you satisfaction.
I just would add to Pankaj one more point. I think I have to give it to the brand that over the last 5 or 6 years now, they have not let go of the program. They've not, even reduced the commitment levels on this program. In fact, they've increased it and they've taken it to the next level. And I'm not sure how many brands have continued this journey on such a big program.
And I mean, yeah, it's an astonishing commitment for a brand. I just want to go back a bit to some of those barriers of engagement as well. How do you pick the right channels? I mean, I know you're working with and through local grassroots NGOs, but how do you, I mean, there must be a broad spread of channels you're using and a broad spread of assets that you're using depending on the stakeholders you're speaking to or trying to reach.
Yeah. So I think the first and foremost is the level of commitment and the sharing of the vision, right? So that is the first and foremost, and you can gauge that very quickly, right? And this is on the basis of track records, on the basis of the past work that has been done, and so on and so forth. The second is the level of capability, right? So the level of capability that would aid us, right, and aid the total program in making a measurable difference, right? And the third is the commitment level, right? So we are not in it for a very, very short term like a program. So therefore it is a true partnership. So on those 3 parameters, we typically work with the right partners. And so far, we've had the good fortune of working with some of the most fantastic people that I've worked with.
And they're clearly reaching those audiences effectively. Tell me, you touched on some of the metrics you've been using earlier. Tell me a bit more about how you've evaluated the campaign and what success looks like, because it's, we're in life or death situations to a certain extent with some of these areas, aren't we?
Sure. So we've never put an ROI calculation on it, just to be completely transparent. So we don't measure it in the way like we would measure business, because this is more than business, this is bigger than business. So we don't measure ourselves in terms of an ROI calculation, but we measure ourselves in terms of the scale of impact, the scope of impact, and the measurability of it, right? So therefore, we will always set ourselves loftier goals, right? So when we talk about, sustainable development indices that we want to improve, right? And those are at a national scale. And in India, to be able to deliver it at a national scale is a huge task. So to be able to either reduce diarrhea by 14%, either it is to improve, the school attendance by 17%, right? And so on. So those are metrics that may look small, okay, but they are very, very big when it comes to preventing, child mortality and education per se, and therefore better lives later on.
Yeah, it's somewhat beyond a traditional brand comms campaign, this one, isn't it?
Yes.
So tell me a bit more about COVID and this year, because I mean, once the health and hygiene conversation became centre stage, there's lots of brands in that space, whether or not they've got this sort of established infrastructure and campaign and strategy that you guys have. What were your priorities and challenges leading a health and hygiene brand as the pandemic hit?
Sure. So when we first heard about something called COVID and something that was coming our way was sometimes in January, right? So when it hit China and so on, at that point in time, so Dettol, as I talked earlier, is a leading disinfection brand. It's a very trusted brand and so on. But at that point in time, it is very easy for a business to become very selfish, okay, and become, very greedy and, try and maximize on the brand, etc. But that was not the focal area or the focal point for us, right? So there were 2 or 3 big areas that were going to come our way, right? The first was on education. Okay. On education, because preventative measures, as WHO also called out, preventative measures were the only shield that we had against the COVID pandemic, etc. So how do you educate consumers on the right preventative measures, sanitizers, hand washing with soap, and so on and so forth? And as a leading brand, we took that on, right? And we took that on even using our resources, even without the benefit to the brand. So we talked about the category and we talked about the importance of behavior change and the habits to prevent it. So we tied up with a lot of movie stars and movie celebrities to actually make public education campaigns. Okay, we called it Apni Suraksha Apne Haath. That is, your safety is in your hands. So you need to wash your hands and so on, and wash it with any soap. Any soap is good, right? So we did all of those. We did a lot of hand wash messages in terms of, washing hands is very critical, with the hand wash, etc. The background is the hand wash frequency in India is very, very low. Okay. So approximately 19%, only 19% people, this is pre-COVID, but 19% of people only will wash their hands after coming into contact with a sick person. Okay.
Right.
Or 15% people will wash their hands after going to a toilet. Now these numbers are not very different globally, by the way, okay, but these are very stark numbers that we are usually not very aware of. So there was a need to be able to drive the habit of hand washing further. Then we educated consumers on how to wash it properly, right? So there is a technique of washing it, and you need to use the 7 steps, and you need to wash it for 20 seconds and so on and so forth. So the entire area on behavior, the education, behavioral change and education was one part of it. The second part of it was just the ramping up the access to products, right? Because we needed to ramp up the production on many of our products and so on, so that we could get it to as many people as possible. The third is, don't be greedy and don't take pricing, right? Don't take a price up. It's very easy to take a price up, but we deferred all the price ups and we said we're not going to take it. And in fact, we took a price down on many of our brands so that we maximize the access. And the fourth was, hand washing and etc. is one part of your journey, but you need to disinfect your laundry, you need to disinfect, the soft surfaces, and whichever way that you could. So getting innovations and fast tracking innovations in all of those areas also helped the population a lot. So in whichever way that you could do behavior change or communication, educating, driving access, and so on and so forth. So we tried to do what we could. We generated about 40 million pounds globally on a Fight for Access fund from RB. And within India, we donated about 10 million bars of soaps, right, to be able to go to the vulnerable communities and so on. So
yeah, that's quite a commitment. Nitin, what's it been like from the agency point of view, supporting the brand as it's navigated the campaign shifting in to deal with COVID?
I think the great thing about RB and Dettol has been that purpose sits at the core of the brand, and I think it needs to be authentic to a brand soul. So when a brand has purpose as its core, and when it affects and determines every aspect of business, from its comm strategy to how it conducts its core business, how it engages and retains employees, and that makes the comms firm's role much easier in that sense, because when the company and the brand believes in that purpose, then everything kind of comes together in its own way. I think Dettol is one such legacy brand, and over several decades, striving for health and hygiene. And I must also add that people are pretty savvy today. There's a lot of information available to them. You have to have a very high level of authenticity when you're trying to communicate with the constituents, which I spoke about earlier, about social and ethical issues. So authenticity is best compass for true purpose, to be honest. And leading with purpose doesn't happen overnight, but with thoughtful listening, commitment, and bravery, uh, you get there. And I think our journey from Swachh to Swasth, it's been amazing, because we've done work with Dettol right down to smaller cities and towns to amplify the message around health and hygiene. We've then amplified it. Social has been a big part of how BSI, DBSI has worked. So the social media channels have been very active. The TikTok challenge was an amazing success earlier in the year. Yeah. So it's been a great journey, and now we have moved into the second phase, which is Swasth, which is more about health and nutrition, and the vision is where people live healthier and live better. So the brand has stood for hygiene and sanitation over the years, and now we're going to move that conversation to Swasth, which is health. So it's been a fab journey.
We've touched a little bit on purpose. You both mentioned it in passing. Pankaj, how do you define Dettol's purpose?
See, Dettol is a brand that protects Indian families against germs. Okay, so the purpose of the brand is essentially to aid the Indian families in fighting against illnesses. So if we can get India moving one step closer to being illness free, that would be fantastic from a Dettol point of view. So fighting against germs, protecting the families against illness is the purpose for Dettol.
And how do we differentiate, Nitin, between a brand like Dettol that truly has its purpose runs through the core of what the company does, sells, how it communicates, all the action it takes, and for those where purpose is still maybe more of a marketing strategy? How can consumers and stakeholders tell the difference?
I think purposeful brands lead with the unique purpose in the world, and it kind of lets it benefit every aspect of their business life, from strategy to reputation. And that makes brand purpose a group commitment, and allowing it to, I believe, rise organically and lift everyone in the company, from C-suite to, I guess, the trainee or the interns in the company. And I think Dettol is one such legacy brand that has been striving for improved health and hygiene. Leading with purpose doesn't happen overnight, but with thoughtful listening, with commitment and bravery, I think a brand may find its nascent purpose strategy tucked into that one line of business. And if it's current, and looking at the current social and political landscape tell us anything, it is that time, the time is ripe really to make business strategy a purpose strategy. So I believe the company's survival over time, every company's survival will depend on having a good purpose-driven strategy. So it comes from the core, honestly, and I think customers are savvy enough to make it out.
And Pankaj, tell me a bit more about how you express Dettol's purpose through all of your marketing activities and brand activities, not just this campaign.
So essentially, we always talk about germs. We don't talk about any other frills. And we will do it in all of the communities. We will spread education. Okay. We will talk about the category and how the habits are important versus the brand benefit. Okay. Of course, the brand Dettol is very trusted. But when you start talking about and start creating and start measuring yourself in the right habits that inculcate the right behaviors that help protect people from illnesses, etc., then you are in a hallowed path towards achieving the purpose. The second area is also measuring yourself on it. Okay. Yeah. Versus just, saying it and then letting it go. So towards, you talked about some of the brands that everybody has a purpose. Okay. Not many live it. Right. So it has to do with the areas of, are you making an impact? Are you making an impact at a scale? Okay. And are you making an impact over time, sustainability. Okay. Many of the pretender brands that you will see will fall flat on these three criterias. Okay. So they will not make an impact. They won't make an impact at a scale, and they'll definitely, not make an impact over time. So when we use Dettol, so we've tested it amongst the communities and etc., that families that use Dettol fall ill less often. That's one of the core claims that we go and use. And therefore, it's there in the product, it's there in the communication, it's there in the activities that we do, it's there in the community impact that we have. So purpose is not very different versus the everyday activity that you do, and it helps the brand. Like I would say it very openly, it helps the brand significantly. We just don't run after the brand benefits, but the brand benefits happen.
And do you ever get any resistance when you're working with kind of grassroots NGOs to a partnership with a brand, with a commercial organization? I mean, do they get that this is something that's genuine to you rather than you just trying to capitalize on their access to those audiences?
Sure. So you always have resistance, okay, and resistance comes in many forms. When we started off, there would always be the resistance on, are you trying to benefit the brand? Right? But over a period of time, I think the stature that the Banega Swachh India, now Banega Swasth India, has built up, right? People don't have that question, right? Because people have seen the results and so on and so forth. But when you work at the grassroots level, there are other challenges. Like I talked about, language challenges, logistic challenges, but the biggest challenge is against change. Okay. So when you're talking about behavior change, that is one of the fundamental resistances that you have. Okay. And therefore you need to, it's not tell the people and they'll adopt it, right? You need to use different ways. Sometimes you need to show them the results. Sometimes you need to educate them. Sometimes the people they trust, and which might not be you, right? And that's where the NGO partners and all of those come into play. So you need to get it shown through them. Sometimes you need to give them the right access to the right products so that they see it for themselves. So it works in many different ways. And one of the fundamental ways that we found was sometimes adults can be quite stubborn, right? So getting to schools and getting to kids, etc., is a fantastic way of inculcating the right habits.
Yeah, adults can be stubborn. You're absolutely right. Nitin, I'll come to you now. Just looking more broadly, how is brand communications? I mean, you work with an awful lot of household name clients at Avian Week. How is brand comms evolving in India with all of that cultural diversity?
I think it's very clear over the last few years. Brands. We did a research called Brands in Motion, and one of the core things that's come out in that research is that customers need functionality less and purpose more. And it was about, I think, 35 or 40% functionality, purpose versus functionality, and now it is close to 50-50. So it's increasingly customers are demanding more purpose from their brands. So that you can see that evolving in the market today. You can see multiple brands looking at purpose-driven campaigns, but I think eventually those campaigns have to be authentic. You cannot do greenwashing or whatever. You can't just do purpose for the sake of marketing, and people are able to see through that. So to answer your question, yes, I think brand comms is moving towards more purpose-driven communications. We can see that in a lot of the work we're doing.
And Pankaj, coming to you, the title of this session is Communicating with Humanity, right? So how is that notion of humanity brought to life in the communication strategy and execution for you as a brand leader? And how has that been brought even more to the fore this year through the pandemic?
Yeah. So so what we've tried to do, an essence of our communication is not on selling the brand and not on selling the benefit. And that is typically a lot of the manufacturers will sell the brand benefit. But a significant part of our communication is, like I talked about, on behavior change, on habit creation, right? So when we're talking about behavior change and habit creation, so that essentially translates itself into fantastic outcomes and results for the peoples in the communities. And when you do it at a scale like Dettol, right, at a large scale, like that it leads to some fantastic results. So here I'll talk a little bit about a TikTok campaign, right? So hand washing was the need of the hour, right? And what we did was we created a song. So people don't wash hands because people find hand washing boring, all right? So it's just a very boring thing to wash your hands with, and so we wanted to change that habit and make it really cool, right? So we got an entire routine. We got a song that was for 20 seconds and that talked about the need for washing hands. And then we got a dance routine that people could do that, combine the thing and hopefully make that entire thing cool. That took off like super strong in India. Okay, lots of celebrities chipped in, lot of influencers chipped in, lot of consumers went in. We got about a 125 billion views. We got some 75 million videos that were made on it, and everybody doing that move, right?
Yeah.
And it had nothing to do with Dettol, but it was doing hand washing, right? And there were about 585 million videos that were shared on social media. Okay, and everybody, personalizing their own hand washing routine and stuff. And this, amongst everything else, has grown the category penetration. And I'm not talking about Dettol penetration. The category penetration on hand wash in India, it has more than doubled over that period of time, right?
Right.
So all those things that genuinely help the community, that help humanity, we would always go and try and do those in interesting ways.
Are you going to demonstrate the TikTok dance?
So just to add to, sorry, Maya, go ahead.
I just wanted to know if Pankaj was going to demonstrate the TikTok dance.
Yeah, so this is going to be, this is not going to be,
Don't have to.
TikTok's not working in India at the moment, Maya.
I've danced so much on it. Okay, I cannot tell you about it, but yes.
And just TikTok's not working in India at the moment. So, but just to add to what Pankaj said, I think apart from humanity, I think apart from being human to the core, the brand needs to just come across as authentic and ethical. I think that's been so important in Dettol's case. Whether it was a TikTok challenge, whether it's BSI, the whole piece together, the authenticity comes through, and if you're not ethical and authentic, customers reject you totally. And I can say that also while amplifying the campaign, when we're working with whether it's media or partners or on ground, it's not been easy in the first year to convince them about the authenticity of the brand, but over the time they've seen the commitment of the brand, and they realize that the brand is so committed to this cause, and they are very willing to talk about it, write about it, and engage with the brand on this.
And what's been the impact on the brand overall of the past 6 years campaign and activity? Do you measure perception and sentiment?
Sure. So what we do is, see, overall the brand has done really, really well in India. And I'm talking about some of the numbers over the last 5-6 years. Over the last 5-6 years, the brand penetration has grown more than 80%. Okay. So it has nearly doubled from a penetration point of view. The equities, many equities that are, you'd like to be associated with, okay, like the brand I trust and the brand I love, okay, the brand I trust, okay, is the best in, germ efficacy and so on and so forth. So many of the attributes have increased by almost 50%, so 30 to 70% depending on the time frame. Now, is it all because of this? Is it, because of all the other activities? You will never be 100% sure. But like I said, I never put an ROI on the BSI program and the work that we do on the purpose program, etc. But I am 100% sure that it has had a very, very strong bearing on how the brand has performed, and the brand has performed fantastically well. And it is the #1 disinfection brand in India, and a very trusted one. It's a #1 trusted personal care and health brand in India.
Amazing. Nitin, what's next for the campaign? What of the guys at Avian We got up their sleeve for going into 2021?
Well, as part of behavior change comms initiatives, BSI plans to double the outreach in the coming years. And in collaboration with RB, we will strive to work towards expanding that outreach through effective comms. We, of course, one of the core aims would be to onboard partners and strengthen our association with all the existing stakeholders. Through new techniques, through innovation. TikTok challenge was fabulous. using some more social media elements to it, depending on who we're reaching out to. Today, in India, internet penetration has increased tremendously. It's now reaching the grassroots as well. So, social media will be an important part of that campaign as well going into next year. And of course, I actually strongly believe that doing some innovative local programs at the grassroots level will be critical as well.
Pankaj, anything to add about plans for next year for the brand?
No, I think there is a lot of unfinished work in what we've already started. So it is too soon to move to a lot of the places, lot of different areas. So we continue to work on the school program, right? So we continue to work on many of the initiatives that we've started, including environment, air, and so on and so forth. But we are also progressing a lot on the malnutrition and stunting, and malnutrition and therefore stunting programs that are there, and we piloted a few in India. But I'm very, very kicked about the kind of progress that we're making on the school program and the hygiene curriculum, because I genuinely believe that education and prevention is the big element and the big habit that will help against even the COVID pandemic, and also even against many other unforeseen situations that will come for us in the future.
And what about for you when you're moving to London at the end of the year? Is that still a plan?
Yeah, so that's the plan. So I'll be moving over to London, and I'll look after the Dettol brand globally. It's a huge privilege. It's a huge privilege. Dettol is a great brand, and globally it is an iconic brand in many of the countries. So
Well,
it's a huge privilege. It's a huge challenge, but I'm looking forward to it.
Well, it's a testament to everything you've achieved in India for the brand, I guess. I mean, that to roll that out globally, that level of shifting the needle for the brand will be incredible. Obviously, it's trusted all over the place. But yeah, interesting times. Can I ask you both, what are you both most proud of your work together over the past 6 years?
I think for me, just partnering together and delivering something that is results that are scaled, that are impactful and are sustainable. I talked about, reaching, 60% of the India's registered schools with the curriculum. I talked about, the diarrhea, 14% reduction, 17% increase in school attendance, and those kinds of things are metrics that I am incredibly proud of, right? And that happens only when you work with the right partners, with the like-minded partners and stuff. Business results increase and decrease, and like that happens. And so that is, yes, it's there, you work for it, it's all great. But when you impact the community in such a way, right, and in such a scaled way, and makes a difference, I think that is the most proud thing for me. And it would not be possible, without working with like-minded partners like Avian, like NDTV, many NGOs, McCann, our advertising agency, and so on.
Nitin, what about you? What are you most proud of?
I think, our vision globally is to use the power of comms to move people to positive action, towards behavior change. And I think this campaign and partnership with RB has given us that ability to do that. I think time and again, our stakeholders, partners, and communities have been appreciative of our efforts as we've contributed to bringing behavior change with campaigns. And I think this campaign has been very close to me personally. I've been, personally been involved in it for a long time. We started working with RB a few years back. So it's been great. I mean, Pankaj was talking about some of the behavior change we've in this partnership has brought about, or this campaign. Right from launching India's first world toilet college to seeing to helping save 485,000 economic working days, because reduction in sickness, to reduction in diarrhea, to creating many blocks ODF free. It's been amazing. The sheer number of people in India, makes this campaign so important, because while the numbers are globally very similar about people, how many 15 or 20% people wash their hands and stuff, but the sheer number of people just makes it so important in India. So yeah, we've loved every bit of it.
Well, you've certainly had a huge impact, and yeah, I can imagine being in a brand leadership or an agency leadership role where you're seeing real, behavioral change that really matters, must be really satisfying and fulfilling. So long may the relationship continue. We're going to be wrapping up in a couple of minutes. I've just got 1 or 2 questions from you. How hard was it, Pankaj, to get buy-in from the C-suite and from leaders within Dettol and the wider company RB Health to kind of go ahead with this and to keep building it year after year?
Surprisingly, not very difficult. So the internal buy-in was not very difficult. So once the vision was set out, once we had a platform, and frankly speaking, we had a lead. And like I talked about, the lead was from the government, right? The government called about, the Swachh Bharat mission as a priority, and that we wanted to do it. We just found out ways to make a difference together with the partners in our own small little way. So once we had the lead, and once it fitted in so nicely to the brand purpose, the internal was never a problem. And internal, the global CEOs, for example, have changed, etc. But the support for the initiative and the work that we're doing remains as strong as ever. So internal was never a problem. We did face a lot of challenges externally, like I talked about previously, but I think with the dint of hard work that was there with the partners, with the kind of plans that were made, with a lot of support from the government as well, right? So once they started recognizing that we were doing something meaningful, then everybody came in together, and it's been a very, very fruitful journey so far.
Amazing. And what kind of, I've got a question as well about what kind of anecdotal feedback do you get from the NGOs and even to kids who you're putting through these kind of educational processes?
Yeah. So some of the folks are surprised, okay, because, so many of the corporates will not stick by for that long, right?
Yeah.
And many of the folks will not do it at such a scale and at such a sustained basis. So people are surprised, but the feedback keeps on changing, right? So now people are used to it. So frankly speaking, a lot of the RB gets known now by the BSI program in the government and the NGO circles, right? Versus the other way around. So either they get known by the BSI or they get known by the brand Dettol, because these are the two iconic elements. So it changes, and with the kids and so on. So initially sometimes there would be resistance, like I said, but the kids are much more amenable, right? Provided you make a program for them that they can playfully integrate into, okay, and that is a challenge for the brand teams to be able to do it well. They are very, very good.
I'll echo that. I think I've spoken to some of the NGOs myself in the last couple of years, and they've been very, very appreciative, and they've also been, I think, pleasantly surprised that the commitment has continued from RB, and they've not wavered in terms of the commitment over the years. So whether it's working with partnerships with channels like NDTV or with NGO partners on ground.
Okay, amazing, inspiring stuff. We're out of time, guys. Bang on 45 minutes. I've got light coming in through my blind. Sorry, I've gone all stripy. Thank you both so much for running us through that incredibly inspiring, like you said, incredibly long-term brand commitment to fulfilling its purpose in its local communities. So thank you both so much for your time this afternoon, and it's in the evening where you are. So thanks very much for joining us today. And I'm going to hand my hand in.
Thank you so much, Maya.
Thank you so much.